Hello, everybody. Welcome to the dedication of the official portrait of our friend, the 12th Dean of the Harvard Law School, Martha Minow. My name is John Manning. I'm the 13th Dean of the Harvard Law School, and I will be your MC this afternoon. I want to start by welcoming Martha and her family, her parents Newton Minow and Josephine Baskin Minow, her sisters Nell and Mary, and her husband Joe. Some of them are here in person and some of them are here remotely, but I want to take this moment to thank all of them from the bottom of my heart for lending Martha Minow to HLS for 8 crucial and challenging years. I also want to acknowledge and thank President Emerita Faust, Chief Justice Marshall, Professor Kennedy, and Mary Minifie, the wonderful artist who painted the portrait that we're about to see. Each of them has kindly agreed to say a few words a little bit later in the ceremony. I also want to thank President Backow, Provost Garber, our senior fellow Bill Lee, and all of the faculty, staff, students, and alumni who joined us here today to celebrate this really great moment. Now, before we reveal the portrait, which will be very soon, and hear from our speakers, I want to say a few words about my very dear friend and highly consequential predecessor, Martha Minow. As you may recall, Martha became dean on July 1st, 2009. Now that date is very significant because the school, like the rest of the world, was in the throes of the Great Recession. It was a terrible time to become dean and a terrible time to become dean of Harvard Law School because Martha had to deal with rapidly dropping revenues while she was also getting set to absorb rapidly rising expenses because of the construction of our fantastic but not cheap WCC building. Martha worked very, very hard, and she made some very tough decisions that studied the school's finances. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fun. And in the process, she did 2 extraordinary things. One is she really kept up our morale. Martha has been compared to the parents who during the Great Depression found ways to keep their kids from feeling just how bad things were. And that took a lot of doing, and Martha did it extraordinarily well. And the second thing is related. In really, really lean times, she kept us focused on a few very key priorities that moved the law school forward and made a great school even better. Martha worked tirelessly with our colleagues to grow our faculty in ways that made it both more excellent and more diverse along many dimensions. She invested heavily in financial aid, with a particular emphasis on the Low Income Protection Plan, which enables our students to pursue their greatest aspirations without regard to financial means. Martha also created a culture of continuous pedagogical and curricular innovation, reminding us that if great institutions don't aspire to be on the leading edge of change, they will simply fall behind. And she turned our attention and energy and resources to access to justice, to providing lawyers for people who really need them. Martha made meaning of this crisis. She not only pulled HLS through, she made us better, stronger, and deeper in the process. Martha Minow led our institution with brilliance and conviction, with empathy and humility. She modeled openness and pluralism. She showed us that you can be committed to the vital mission of advancing justice while also recognizing that people of good faith can disagree productively and collegially about what that entails. She showed friendship and concern, respect and humanity for all. And she always, always showed remarkable dignity, strength, equanimity, and generosity of spirit, even, and maybe especially, when it wasn't easy to do so. So I want to conclude on a personal note. Martha, you are a dear, dear friend and someone I learn from every day. When I became dean, Martha told me I am always on speed dial. In a job that's simultaneously deeply fulfilling and deeply challenging, I turn to Martha Minow all the time for wisdom, advice, and counsel. No former dean has been more generous to with her successor, and I can't imagine any deans being closer to their predecessor than I am to mine. When I need Martha, I literally just send an email that says, speed dial, and she is there. And when we need more than just a phone call, we hop in a car and we go to the Watertown Diner, where we have breakfast for dinner. And we always order an extra plate of pancakes or latkes for the table, because we always have a lot to talk about. And because, you know, pancakes and latkes are just awesome. I hope you know, Martha, what a blessing your friendship is to me. I could not imagine doing this job without you. Martha, thank you for all you've done for this law school and for modeling what it means to lead a life of integrity and service. Thank you, my friend. And now we get to see the actual portrait. And so I'm going to invite up Mary Minifie, the painter of this very beautiful portrait. She's a graduate of Wellesley College and has an MFA from Boston University School of Fine Arts. She is a world-renowned portrait artist, and in a moment you'll see why. And so I'm going to ask her and Martha to come up.
Need those. It's an honor to be here. Thank you. In thinking about what I would say today, I decided that I would look at Wikipedia and find out what they thought about portraits. I was very surprised to find that it was very close to what I had been thinking about. Wikipedia says, a portrait is intended to achieve a likeness of the sitter that is recognizable to those who have seen them, and is ideally a very good record of their appearance. But this idea of exact likeness was not always so in the past. Wikipedia says again, in fact, this concept has been slow to grow, and it took centuries for artists in different traditions to acquire the skills for painting a good likeness. A well-executed portrait was expected to show the inner essence of the subject from the artist's point of view, or a flattering representation, not a literal likeness. All that has changed with the use of the camera. A photograph takes an unfiltered, unconsidered record of the exact visual facts. On the one hand, it produces an unmistakable factual likeness. On the other hand, it catches in 1 second in time the outer skin of the person. Aristotle said, the aim of art is to present not the outward appearance of things, but their inner significance. For this, not the external manner and detail, constitutes true reality. So in portrait painting, what are we trying to do? Why not just take a big photograph and frame it and put it on the wall? Well, for one thing, a portrait painting lasts for centuries, and a photograph does not. But there is another kind of duration as well, a timelessness, a different reality that comes from months of working, thinking, adjusting, that creates a different feeling and perception on the part of the person who looks at it. Cameras are also responsible for everyone wanting to have big, happy smiles and lively expressions. Everyone wants to be thin as well. Most older portraits do not have big smiles, except for Mona Lisa, and hers was quite modest. Even with such limitations, there is still the full range of emotions that can be expressed, more often through the eyes than the mouth. For me, much of the expression comes through body language. That's where you get the feel of the person. That's where things like nobility and monumentality are shown. When I met Professor Minow, I knew my job was to make this dynamic woman have those qualities. We tried several different places to find good backgrounds that would complement her in the portrait. I finally decided that her study, with all of her beloved books and color, would be the best way of showing her. And then having her position front and center speaks of her strength and her assurance. The painting of a professional woman is very interesting to me. I love the idea of finding a way to show both the profession and also the grace and beauty of the private person. I often ask myself why I do this, why I'm in this crazy business. It's kind of nuts to think that you can take paint and a flat canvas and make a person out of it. I love to paint the human form. The face is especially the most fascinating of all things to paint. You start out with blobs of color, you move them around, they grow and change, and then one day you look at it and there's that person looking out at you. It's truly amazing. You can never learn everything about painting. It never grows old or runs out of things to teach you. It's a never-ending pursuit for more. In my opinion, a portrait is an attempt to show the world the magic of a human being in all its best, not just what is outside, but what is inside as well. Irving Penn, another great portraitist, said, "People faced with the prospect of a camera portrait put on a face they think is the one that they would like to show the world. Every so often, what lies behind the facade is rare and more wonderful than the subject knows or dares to believe." Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for this beautiful portrait, which will grace the library walls for, we hope, forever. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Drew Faust, the President Emerita of Harvard University and the Arthur Kingsley Porter University Professor. Drew was an impactful and historic leader of Harvard, and like Martha, did not waste a crisis. She vastly expanded financial aid, made tremendous strides in diversity, inclusion, and belonging, built a world-class online presence, and led an unmatched capital campaign. Drew is also a great human being, and it's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce President Emerita Drew Faust.
It was my great privilege to work with Martha for 8 years and to be a witness not just to her dedicated stewardship of Harvard Law School, but her contributions to the university and to higher education more broadly. As John pointed out, she opened her deanship with one set of crises and ended her deanship with another set of crises. She had to pick up the pieces after the Great Recession and deal with not just financial pressures, but also a time of deep questioning about legal education that she was specifically chosen to respond to. She was the perfect person to deal with that set of questions. And then she ended her deanship with an era of profound challenge to the rule of law. And again, her commitment has been invaluable in addressing those issues. I want to mention specifically 2 characteristics of Martha's leadership that especially stand out in my mind. And this is just 2 among many such characteristics. But these seem to me to have shaped and characterized her deanship in very fundamental ways. The first is intellect. Her neon brilliance cut through complexities to find solutions when it seemed that none were there. I saw this again and again in the Council of Deans, where she won enormous admiration from her fellow deans for being able to use her mind in service of not just her scholarship, but of the community in which she was a leader. And the second characteristic I want to note is her compassion. It fuels her politics and her scholarship, but it also characterized her way of leading and of deaning. I think she felt that being a dean, and this is something that the deans one day discussed in the Council of Deans, it was an almost pastoral role at times to shepherd a community through the very difficult circumstances in which much of her deanship was placed. I must say I miss the opportunity to watch this decanal virtuosity from a ringside seat. But today, with the unveiling of her portrait, we symbolize her ongoing impact and legacy, and we install her among the immortals. Congratulations, Martha.
Thank you, Drew. Lovely remarks. I'm delighted to introduce Margie Marshall, currently at Choate Hall and Stewart, the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts and a former General Counsel of Harvard. Chief Justice Marshall was a principled, disciplined, and creative jurist. She will stand in history as a pivotal figure in the realization of human freedom. In 2003, she wrote the decision in Goodridge versus Department of Public Health, which made Massachusetts the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. It is my honor and just delight to introduce Chief Justice Marshall.
So, in law, there is no such thing as plagiarism. You steal somebody else's words, and we call it precedence. And my remarks today are a collection of precedents taken from many joyous conversations about Martha. Precedent. My very first class at Harvard Law School was a session of civil procedure with Professor Martha Minow. Martha began her class, "I will not intimidate you with my stature. I will intimidate you with the amount of reading I assign." Martha Minow did not intimidate, she inspired. Precedence. Martha is an intellectual pioneer. We forget, one colleague said, that she was a foundational figure in what we now refer to as women and the law. She all but invented that field. And then there's Brown and its progeny, and disability law, and the news media, and reconciliation, and forgiveness. The list is long, her range of ideas is far-reaching, her works enduring in our consciousness decades after they are published. Precedence. Martha takes great intellectual risks, always venturing into new and very difficult terrains. A strategic thinker, a visionary, the impact of her work is enormous. Making all the difference, her work on inclusion and exclusion continues to be, quote, the absolute template around the world, a seminal work in crafting Article 24 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Between Vengeance and Forgiveness, essential reading in countries recovering from conflict, and her recently published Saving the News provokes and infuriates, and already is an iconic text about digital communications. If you agree with Jefferson that he who lights his taper at mine receives light without darkening me, then Martha is surely the brightest initial flame, her ideas freely spread from one to another across the globe. Precedence. I can remember exactly where she was sitting in exactly which office when I asked her, "Do you like being a professor?" "I love it," came her immediate answer. "She is the best teacher I ever had. She is the most important teacher I ever had. She believed in me." The descriptions burst from former students, all with names you would recognize. Dean Manning, can I become a full-time student and become one of Martha's students? Tikkun Olam, repairer of the world. It is the Martha who brings you her brilliance, her strength, her compassion to her advocacy for the most vulnerable, children, racial, ethnic, religious minorities, women, persons with disabilities, the dispossessed that I know best. Her service on and for countless boards and organizations is marked by her imaginative, persistent, and creative leadership. How best to deliver services to those who cannot afford a lawyer to address our national crisis of civil justice? Martha is the visionary who helped to open doors and open windows. And today, with bipartisan support, millions of federal dollars flow to Texas, West Virginia, Kentucky to pay for legal services for middle-class and poor Americans, to create a national fund to replicate and expand successful legal aid programs. That was a Martha brainchild. The Chief Justice of Massachusetts is concerned about the great disparity in the rates of imprisonment among whites, African Americans, and Hispanics in this Commonwealth. He calls Martha. 4 years later, a Harvard Law School report is the basis for significant sentencing reform efforts in Massachusetts and across our nation. Martha works quietly, thoughtfully, successfully. Context is important. She gets it done, and always with insight and elegance. And a personal anecdote. In 1966, 50 years ago, as many of you know, Senator Robert Kennedy visited South Africa. This was at the height of apartheid, when its brutality was reaching its zenith. I was a young anti-apartheid student, and I was in the audience when Senator Kennedy spoke the words that are now etched in the granite of his own grave, and words that I have never forgotten. It is, he said, from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time a person stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, she sends forth the tiny ripple of hope. And crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a hope which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. Scholar, teacher, mentor, leader, change agent in the world. From numberless acts of courage and belief, Martha Minow has spent her life sending forth ripples of hope. And every day, across our beloved country and across the world, her ripples are sweeping down walls of oppression and resistance. Hers is, indeed, a life in the law lived greatly.
Beautiful remarks. So Randy Kennedy is the Michael R. Klein Professor of Law. Randy's a great teacher and a great scholar. He's the author of 6 books, the most recent of which is just out, Say It Loud, on race, law, history, and culture. Randy and Martha recently partnered with Cass on a new scholarly journal, the American Journal of Law and Equality, the first issue of which was just published, and it's a wonderful, wonderful new journal. Randy's also fearless and principled and brilliant, and adds so much to our community and to the world. And without further delay, it's my great pleasure to present Randy Kennedy.
Mentors of mine at Yale Law School told me that when I arrived here at Harvard Law School in the summer of 1984, I should be sure to introduce myself right away to Martha Minow. I did, and I'm glad that I did. Martha has been a wonderful colleague for 37 years and counting. She is remarkably generous with her time and energy. She listens carefully to descriptions of envisioned projects. She reads closely drafts of writings. She responds in detail to verbal presentations. She is nicely frank. A book publisher once suggested to me a project to pursue. I was attracted to it and turned to Martha for advice. She maintained that what the book publisher had in mind would be a diversion from, not a complement to, my scholarly development. I resisted, but she pressed her point. Not obnoxiously, but firmly and persistently. Eventually, I came to realize that she was right. It is a real blessing to have a wise person on your side who, with your best interest in mind, is willing to say to your face what you really don't want to hear. Martha is an incisive thinker and prolific author and a much-in-demand counselor and administrator with a record that bespeaks accomplishment of a high order. You cannot become dean of Harvard Law School without a considerable amount of push and moxie and verve. This is a competitive place, and Martha has obviously been successful in it. Many who are high achievers themselves, however, lack the wherewithal to appreciate the triumphs of others. By contrast, Martha takes delight, open, exuberant, unembarrassed delight in appreciating the achievements of her colleagues. Then there is the personal stuff. Martha has been a fabulous cheerleader at those happy landmarks, births, graduations, appointments, awards. She has also been an active presence at other landmarks, the sad ones. In April 2005, Martha lost her good friend, Yvette Mattori, my wife of blessed memory. That time for me was excruciating. Martha, you were unfailingly attentive and gracious and comforting and helpful, and I will always be grateful for what you did to buoy my spirits during that sad, sad, sad time. This is a beautiful community, filled overwhelmingly by thoughtful people trying to deepen and extend knowledge, and by doing so, make the world better. Martha, you exemplify the best in this community, and you have worked assiduously to bring out the best in your colleagues. For that, you have earned our thanks and our admiration.
Thank you, Randy. Wonderful remarks. Now, all I need to do is say, Martha Minow, the 300th anniversary university professor.
One of the things I learned to do when I was dean was speak without notes. That is not going to happen today. This is an overwhelming experience. My dear friend John Manning said to me it was my bat mitzvah. I give my deep, deep thanks to everyone who has made the time to be here. Special thanks to Mary Minifie, who was such a heroine to do this, and to do it during COVID and other challenges, just extraordinary. And you made the process a pleasure. You also made me look pretty good. And you even made my office look neat. It's just remarkable. And your remarks today were so meaningful. Frankly, the only regret that I have is that the portrait is just of me, rather than all the people who really deserve to be there every step of the way. Becoming dean, or any kind of leader, but especially of an academic institution, is not about oneself. It's about the opportunity to serve and to collaborate. It would be impossible without constant teamwork and discussion and more discussion and connections across every possible relationship imaginable inside the institution and beyond. Anything that I have been told that you've heard today that I did, it was made possible because of a lot of other people, all those relationships, all those collaborations. That is also what makes the work so meaningful and memorable. Those speaking today are superb individuals who in themselves represent the very best of those qualities and also represent others. I'm so old, I think about Saul Steinberg, who was a cartoonist in the New Yorker, Margie remembers, who would do these cartoons that would be line drawing and you'd see behind each person more and more and more and more people. And that's true of me, and that's true of those who've spoken so exquisitely today. I'm so grateful to Drew Faust, whose invitation and recruitment to me to serve as dean and even more, I'm grateful for Drew. I'm grateful for your wisdom, your encouragement, your vision, your clarity, your friendship. And that means Charles as well. And we save the world every time we have a meal. And that means Larry, Drew's successor, who was even before president, my friend and my advisor, and an alum of the Harvard Law School. Still think about advice that you gave me. Drew also represents the incomparable Bill Lee, brilliant problem solver, exemplifying lawyering at its best, dear friend, and Alan Garber, who leapt to the opportunity to have conflict when we discussed this job of provost. And I said, you like conflict, and you have mastered it more gracefully than anyone I can imagine. And Steve Hyman before you, serenely navigating conflicts and problems. John Manning, once a deputy dean, my brother, we became friends, and now my extraordinary dean, who convinced me to have this event, convinced me to have the portrait, talked me into it all, and so much more. More will be said over pancakes. And whose love of this place actually brings out all that it can be. This portrait and this event would not happen without Liberty Keneally. And remember, where's Liberty? When I hired you, we talked about, could we make kindness run through this institution? And it has every day since you joined the place. Liberty helps me remember to thank Catherine Cronin, event planner court extraordinaire, Greg Mitleider, who's making Zoom possible. Leslie Schoenfeld from the library, who worked with the movers. This is quite a production. And Catherine Claypool couldn't be here today. Nothing that happens at Harvard Law School could happen without Catherine. She's all over this portrait. And the entire academic affairs teams, past and present, vice deans, deputy deans, Kelsey Ryan, and others from our office. Now she's making a difference with the Human Rights Program. Fran McCrossan, whose title of administrative dean just does not capture what it means to be the person who gets called to say, are we going to have a snow day or not? Or what's your worst scenario plan and what are you going to cut in the budget? Or we are having a leak in the roof. Maybe you should have actually paid for that repair. Chickenpox we had the first week of my deanship with a group that was in the dorms. Security issues, shifting to non-smoking. Oh yeah, and building 2 buildings. I had been on the faculty for 28 years when I became dean. It's now 41. I had no idea what it took to make this place work. And it's the crucial work of John Archipredi, dealing with actual snowstorms. I mean, that we're gonna flood the whole buildings and the grade and you don't even wanna know, but the time that we rescued the portrait of Justice Scalia from the library because of the roof leaks, that was a memorable day. The librarians were heroines then and always. The registrar, financial aid, dean of students, alumni relations. Where is Steve, my partner in crime? We traveled around the world. We slept overnight in the Beijing airport with Belle Alford, who opened the world to me and to so many other deans. The Council of Deans, a place of wisdom. The support and commiseration, collaboration around the table, strengthening for the future, guiding this institution and the vision of what it represents. Mary Minifie and I, in particular, discussed, could I have a photograph of students in this painting? It's in there. You can't quite see it. But students are, of course, what it's all about. And I'm so thrilled that some students able to come here today. And alumni I discovered are simply grown-up students. Pretty fabulous. And also mentors and inventors and the visiting committee, the Dean's Advisory Board, so many people. The more personal circles, my friends, colleagues, role models, should be in this painting. Randy, we have been friends through so much. Thank God for you. And our weekly pandemic conversations have literally been a lifeline. Margie, you have been my heroine for so many years, and your remarks are all that actually reflects who you are and what a difference you have made in the world, and your generosity beyond belief. My colleagues here at the Harvard Law School, my faculty colleagues, are brilliant. But what I didn't know until I became dean was how generous and kind and talented you are. And I have, of course, friends even outside of Harvard, hard to believe. And one of my friends at Harvard, Lonnie Guinier, said to me, you need to pick your own personal board of directors. To whom are you accountable? And I am so grateful for the people who serve as my personal board of directors, including my rabbi and friend, Jonathan Krauss. All of these people should be in this portrait, and that means also the teachers who have challenged me and guided me. And I'm just gonna name a couple, and then I'm gonna be done. Mr. Martin in 6th grade, who terrified me completely, but also taught me that questions may be more important than answers. Miss Kicksmiller of high school, who passed away during COVID, who said about political theory, think about the idea of the person behind the theory. What kind of human being is imagined? I still think about that every day. My college thesis advisor, Jerry Linderman, an expert on war, who also said, think about the people. Think about the people making the decisions and the people affected by them. In graduate school, working with the Sesame Street workshop to develop a new TV show and learning that actually the process was at least as important as the product. Totally changed my life. And in law school, Bob Cover, who taught me about the danger of rationalization and that conscience can hide behind a role. So be careful about letting a role do that to you. My early bosses, Judge David Bazelon, was asked, why do you get the interesting cases? And he said, I don't get the interesting cases, I make them interesting. Justice Thurgood Marshall, who knew procedure more than anybody else, so I figured I'd better learn it. He said, when your case is weak on the substance, know procedure better than anyone else. And he also said something I thought about every single day as dean and as a mother, pick your battles. My sisters, Nell and Mary, and my brother-in-law, David, and their families, whose teasing and constant kindness and sanity and perspective made all the difference. My in-laws, my mishpacha, various singers and Adlins and Baskins and Whiners. And then, of course, there's Joe and Mira, who offered me an oasis at home, a Harvard Law School free zone. Can you imagine? Especially took work for Joe, since he works here. But you reminded me to have fun and to be human, and patched me up on the days that I needed it. My parents, who are here by Zoom, I hope, I pray. First and foremost, my best teachers, best advisors, and cheerleaders, now 95, both of them. My mother, Jo Baskin-Minow, taught me to write thank you notes and how to do it, and to do it immediately and often, something that I used a lot as dean. She also taught me that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. My father, who has practiced psychiatry without a license for 95 years, taught me not to be driven by my inbox, and that it's amazing what you can get done if you don't need the credit, and that the public interest and greater good are more rewarding than anything else that you can devote your life to. Their parents and grandparents, immigrants, no formal education, but such high hopes and dreams made possible everything I've been able to do. And having all these people in this painting, Mary, would have been a little crowded and a nightmare for composition and light and all the things that you've taught me about. But that is who I hope you see when you look at this portrait. Thank you all so much.